punched over my computer and we're live.
What's up?
Every time it'll start with me adjusting the camera. This thing's ultra wide angle comparatively to what okay.
I kind of moved to the corner this time because I thought it kind of feels like a better.
Yeah, you get to the corner and then I'll just look at you, I guess. Okay, all right. So how's everybody doing? We finally made it. Last week we had a lot of technical difficulties. I probably should have just refreshed the browser at that point and tried it that way, which is something that didn't dawn on me.
Shout out to the one person we have live already.
But
who is it? Comment. Let us know.
Hi, how are you doing out there? Welcome. So this is episode number 24. I was thinking about we got 2 more episodes and that'll be 6 months. 2 more episodes, and we've been rolling every week like clockwork.
2 more
at 11.
No, isn't 24 divided by? We gone for like 4 weeks.
No, I would say we got 52 weeks in a year. We're at 24.
Oh yeah.
26. 26 makes us
That's true.
6 months roughly. 26
I'm just
weeks.
so used to like programming in 4-week periods that
4-week blocks only. I only
some
think
months are 4 weeks, some months are.
I only
5
think
weeks.
in 4-month blocks.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Microcycles and all those.
we'll I want to open up and talk about at first. Obviously, my life is a lot different since Matt Fraser reposted me on his stories.
Hey, I thought that was probably, the
That was the
coolest thing. Like, maybe if Tion Tao ever reposted any of my stories, I don't know why he would.
I don't think he controls his own Instagram. It's controlled by the state.
Maybe he could follow me on TikTok.
Yeah, okay.
But that was pretty awesome. Let the people know what happened.
Yeah, so I was mostly joking there, but it was pretty cool for a little brief moment in time. Basically, Savon, Matt Fraser, and Josh Bridges all have a new podcast together that they do weekly. You can check it out at the Savon, Matt, and Josh podcast on YouTube. That's what it's called so far.
Savon, Matt, and
they were joking around,
Josh.
and he was asking like to crowdsource a name.
Yeah. Which
is like, what if I'll just ask him what it is, and then right before he does it, we'll just come out first with it. And we'll just be like, yeah, we paid $1,000 in promotions on Instagram.
Let's take the YouTube
just
name.
So everybody knows it. But yeah, I was suggesting, because how Josh Bridges does like the Good Dudes thing, and they have like Good Dudes coffee and blah blah blah.
I know he has coffee. Does he have a podcast?
No, it's so the company's called Good Dudes Coffee, and so it's like him, Rich, and Dan Bailey. So people were joking on there and saying to call it the Goodfellas podcast. So it's
Goodfellas.
The Goodfellas instead of the good. Yeah.
So I know Savon has his own podcast, but do Matt and Josh do? You just said Josh didn't.
Josh has a podcast. I don't know how consistent it is, or if it gets much traction. I haven't listened to any of the episodes, and then Savon has his podcast, which obviously I listen to majority of those, and then Matt doesn't have any podcasts. Yeah. But it's interesting because right away, I don't know if you watched any of it. Did you see any of that podcast?
No.
He starts out right away.
Just a little blurb.
Yeah, so I think this is what he promoted, but he just comes on. He's like, "Are you going to compete next year?" He's like, "So Matt, are you competing next year?"
Pretty much what we've been talking about the past 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is Matt Fraser going to do?
Well, that's why it's funny, because I've listened to a lot of the podcasts with Matt Fraser on him, and he's gone on quite a few of them during the off season, which is good because he's trying to develop his personal brand. He wants to stay relevant, let the audience get to know him a little bit more, and it's easy because you just show up. You talk
about yourself,
and it's done, and then it gets promoted and everything else on its own through that person, right, or whoever he's doing it with. Yeah. So I think it's interesting that that he agreed to do it like weekly with Savon. He doesn't have anything of his own going on.
Yeah, I saw Matt Fraser was just on Steffi Cohen's and her boyfriend Hayden. Oh gosh, what's his name? Hayden Bowe. They have their own. They're the owners of Hybrid Athletics, and they have a gym in Miami called Hybrid Performance. But are you familiar with them?
A little bit.
Yeah. So Hayden,
not a lot.
Was he's a power lifter. Also did some weightlifting. He's from Canada, but they live in Miami. Steffi is a power lifter too, like world record holder.
I've heard of her.
Yeah,
before.
Like crazy strong, like crazy talented. And then they have like their team, which is Hybrid Performance, and it's also like a clothing company.
Where's it located?
Miami. But Hayden was a co-founder of a really popular nutrition. What's the one that just did? With
Working
Addie,
Against Gravity?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Hayden's
a
co-founder of Working Against Gravity.
Oh, okay.
So he kind of blew up through that, and then like along with being ridiculously strong, like and a pretty decent power lifter, like they grew their company, and then they have their own like podcast and
that's awesome.
Things like that. And they just had Matt Fraser on there, like Steffi and Matt. I think they did a workout and then like just hung out for like a weekend.
Right.
So I'm probably listen to that at some point. It's probably a little bit different of a vibe than what Matt, Savon, and Josh Bridges would have.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I think that podcast is interesting because the vibe that they have uniquely between like the three of them is what it is. But I think that because when they did the Steffi Cohen one, that's her name, right? And they had Matt's fiance Sammy on there too.
Yeah.
And so I thought that's like perfect. And doing that and essentially diversifying the podcast that he's going on is a really smart move on his part because the more people that you could get yourself in front of, like Sammy's got Feeding the Fraser, so they have that whole entire cooking element that they could branch off to that could be a brand. Plus, I know Nike, he's done well with like the hard work pays off. Like that specifically like is Matt's, it was his hashtag and like now he's basically branding underneath that kind of like as his slogan, which has done really well. So
you've seen he's going into like the art kind of thing, right? With his fitness art kind of combo.
Yeah.
You liking art and things like that? What do you think of it?
I haven't really seen that much of it, like colorways or anything like that. You mean?
I think it's really just like
I'm not familiar with the chakra.
Do you know what specific type it's called when they use like words and they put words on the paper?
Now I know what you're talking about. The poster company.
Yes.
Iconic, I think it is, or whatever like that.
I'm not 100% sure, but I saw he was doing like his own.
He partnered with them, and then he got all his own slogans that he liked stylized like that.
The hard work pays off, and then the.
Yes. Have you actually looked through that company before? There is a few of them. Not no offense, Matt, but I don't want to be like cliche with the Matt Fraser one on there. Oh, I mean, I bought all of them, and for my staff as well. But they do have some really cool like other ones as well inside that company. They have like a bunch of cool Monopoly ones too. They got a ton of them. But yeah, Matt specifically, that's another smart move with his brand. I'm curious, and now he's got Matt OKeefe as his manager. And Matt OKeefe's got like his hand in everything pretty much. He owns Live and Loud Sports. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So
do you know any of the other athletes that he represents?
Oh, dude, like almost all of them, I think.
Mostly like, CrossFit, or like is it just like all over the board, like probably other?
I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that he's like I think he's also like Tia's manager, Katrin David's manager, Brooke Wells' manager. Obviously Matt's. I think a couple people from a lot for the athletes to make sure that they're getting taken care of. He's a good dude. So and I mean, obviously he found an opening in the space there that other people weren't doing. He originally owned a company called Redline that was a clothing company.
Oh, not Redline Energy Drink.
Not company? Redline Energy Drink.
Did you ever have a Redline Energy drink?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up.
That was like the energy drink that the crazy dudes on my football team would take before games. They're like, all right, we're gonna go out there. I'm gonna take this Redline in the bus, and then
not have been good for you.
Everybody was saying like there's cocaine in it, like,
right?
There's
always like that. There's a secret ingredient that's not yet illegal, right? Like it's a new compound. You guys don't know about it,
and it came in like a shot-sized bottle.
And you're always supposed to drink like half. and that was like prior to 5 Hour Energy.
Yes,
and it was a little bit larger.
Prior to like maybe like around the same time Monster came out, or like Red Bull.
I was actually looking up some stuff on Monster. I was I'm getting together to do another video one on actually big soda's like influence in the universities and exercise science. Nothing too crazy, but just to touch on that subject a little bit. And dude, Monster sold to Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah, we were looking at that last week, right?
Yeah, for like 1.6 billion or whatever it was, dude. And I was looking up a couple other ones like Fanta and these other companies that just sold. And I mean, you wouldn't think that a sugary drink that you could just package inside a thing like that would have $1 billion, value to it. Yeah, especially if you put some, ingredients and a bunch of caffeine in it. And I mean, it's all about brand, right? I mean, all the best people are sponsored by Monster Energy.
And then you look at like the sports that they dove into, like more like I feel like when you think of Monster, you think of like extreme sports, like motocross or like BMX or skateboarding. Like Nyjah Houston is like a big, I'm pretty sure he's sponsored by Monster.
He
right?
is. Yeah. That, I mean, I think like Nike and Monster are probably like 1 and 2. Do you ever think we will see a CrossFit Games brought to you by insert the latest like functional energy drink here, which is also owned by Coca-Cola? Do you see a future where that happens?
I mean,
because what are all
I see a possibility that Coca-Cola picks up on like a Fit Aid, right? Or like maybe a Kill Cliff.
Okay.
But it kind of depends on, do those companies want to associate themselves with a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I would say yes, yeah, but it's not at that point. They're just going to be purchased. So what the hell do they care? They're just going to get their money and leave. But I would say it does Coca-Cola think that the market's big enough in that functional energy drink space? And my answer to that would be not, unless they could sell it to a mass amount of people. So therefore, it would have to be manufactured similar to a lot of their products are. So I could see a spinoff of Monster Energy, and then they do for the athlete that wants to keep their drinking clean and all this, and they pitch it the same way that Bang is and everything else, with their zero sugar, but still all this other stuff in it. I could see that if Coca-Cola or Pepsi would do that, I could see it being one of the major sponsors of the CrossFit Games, because you need a lot of freaking money to run that event, and it's an easy way out. Yeah.
What kind of stinks in like that kind of space, like the beverage space, let's say, is, what mainly is or like production and distribution, right? So like Pepsi and Coca-Cola have all these facilities to make and produce whatever it is that Fit Aid or Monster or whatever other smaller company is making, right?
Right.
At pennies to the cost.
Right.
So like whatever it's costing Fit Aid to make their drink, like
Coca-Cola can get down to like less than a cent. Yeah.
And then, they make the cans there. So like the cans aren't even coming from like somewhere else.
Right.
So, with those dollars, Coca-Cola has a lot of dollars that they could put towards sponsoring a major event, right? You think of all the stadiums out there that that have Pepsi products, that have Coca-Cola products. That,
put it this way, you could probably get a 9-figure deal.
Oh my gosh.
For
so many
multiple runs of the CrossFit Games, right? Because I don't really know the ins and the outs of the Reebok contract, but that was like a 10-year deal that they had set up with CrossFit. And I'm sure that deal wasn't like optimized to its fullest or handled in a way that it could have been, as we know how that's come out from before. But I feel like if Eric Rosa, the new CEO of CrossFit, the current CEO of CrossFit, if he leans into the games more than anything else, and then decides, okay, let's go ahead and get ourselves a major sponsor to like cover a lot of these costs. I think other than like an alcohol company, right? Like Michelob or like, who knows, White Claw. CrossFit Games brought to you by White Claw, major sponsor. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Because I know a lot of people like to drink.
Yeah, a lot of CrossFitters like their beer and their White Claws. But I don't know. I just don't see any other path to a really large source of revenue with an asset that's greater than the games.
What if like a Whole Foods sponsored?
That would be interesting.
Like CrossFit Games sponsored by Whole Foods.
That would be interesting, which would also be Amazon, really, right?
True, because Amazon holds on. Yeah, Whole Foods.
But yeah, so I don't know, that something like that would be interesting, and I don't know the cost that would be associated with that. But I mean, technically, Amazon could do that easily, right?
Jeff Bezos.
Connect with Eric Rosa. Games. So those are just a couple of options that I was thinking about. But anyways, we digressed pretty far off of that was off of
that Matt Fraser.
So trying to get ourselves back on track. And Redline was a clothing company that was, I think Matt's official first sponsor.
Oh, really?
Yes, and Matt O'Keefe saw Matt Fraser as the potential next like champion, and really kind of leaned in, and they became good buddies and everything else.
Put a bunch of marbles into Matt's basket.
Yeah, and it's funny because in 2013, I want to say, or maybe through 2000, like late 2012, there was a video that came out of Rich Froning doing Isabel 30 snatches for time at 225.
Okay.
And I think he did it in like 6 minutes or something like that. And then like a week or so later, there was a video of Fraser doing Isabel at 225, and he had shaved like 90 seconds off of that time. And the way that Matt lifted the barbell, and at this time, this is when I first saw him. I didn't know his background in weightlifting, but you could tell that the way that he moved the barbell, that this guy was going to be a freaking champion. Yeah. Like there was just, I mean, the movement was so clean, and especially it was when he was doing like Amanda or with it in Metcon.
Technical aspect of the way he moved was just way better than Rich.
I mean, just comparatively to everybody, but especially Rich, because we all know, I mean, he has a lot of details that could be cleaned up in his weightlifting.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially comparative to him, there used to be a judge called Rudy Nielsen. I'm not a judge. He used to make competitive open programming called the Outlaw Way. You remember that? Outlaw Way?
Outlaw,
It like spun off into like some weightlifting stuff.
Are they not around anymore?
I think they're around. I think I've seen a couple of their Instagram sponsored ads like pop up, but I don't know. I mean, the competitive like fitness programming space is hard to get into
Very
now.
Small these days.
It's bucketed off into just a few.
Yeah.
But anyhow, he always said that the person who snatched the most at the average, roughly around the average numbers of like 5'7" in height and 200 or less pounds body weight would be the winner of the CrossFit Games. And shortly after that 225 video, maybe like a year or so after that, Matt snatched 315. And with like his shoelaces untied.
I was gonna say with shoelace, shoes not tied.
His shoes just half on his feet. And right then it was like, okay, if you watch the way that he lifts that comparatively to his body weight and everything else that he's capable of, then it would match up. And at the time, Rich Froning had the heaviest snatch as a games competitor. Yeah, I think he was one of the first CrossFitters that was like well-rounded. It wasn't just a straight specialty guy. He was one of the first well-rounded CrossFitters that snatched 300 and then later went on to snatch 305. And so the only two men, and then who's the other one that won the games? Ben Smith. In between them. And what does he have? Like a 305 or a 310 snatch, right? So it's funny because that just is like a blanket
snatch being the precursor to like
athleticism and ability. Because if you're and all those guys sit roughly around the same weight, between 190 and 200, right? So if you're at between a 190 and a 200 body weight and you're snatching over 300 pounds, you have the ability to be the CrossFit Games champion. Like that's like prerequisites. Like if you don't have that, like it ain't gonna happen.
So you're telling me I might be able to win the CrossFit Games?
You might be able to win the CrossFit Games.
It's funny you brought up Isabel because just recently I saw an Instagram post of someone he was a weightlifter, but he did Isabel at 150 kilos, 330 pounds.
Oh yeah, Dave Castro reposted that, right?
Yes,
is that what you just said?
Dave Castro reposted it.
And he was
sure. I'm pretty sure it took like 30 minutes. That's still pretty disgusting.
Yeah,
maybe like 45.
I mean, 30 minutes is one on the minute.
One on the minute. That's pretty
impressive.
Disgusting.
Yeah, at 3:30. But it's and then I think he said he was going to give away a free assault bike to whoever won. Which I thought the irony in that is pretty funny. Like,
when is he ever going to hop on that assault bike?
Yeah, like you got somebody who's clearly leans towards strength, and you're like, I'm going to give him an assault bike. Why not a new like
cut down some pounds,
or give him a new Rogue weightlifting bar and weights instead? If Rogue ever comes in stock with anything ever again,
I know they're still all behind on those back orders. But I thought that Isabel was kind of crazy. Just the fact that you can snatch 150 kilos like 30 times. 30 is a lot.
Yeah. It's funny too, because for me, the line between like impressive and gimmicky is like super fine, right? Because like Cole Cloth is a good example. Like he was strong, like really strong. But some of the stuff he did was like almost a little gimmicky. Yeah. And then who's that one dude from the UK that does all the hat stuff?
Oh, Sonny Webster.
Yes, like That's the king of gimmicky to me. Like, impressive.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. Super strong.
Where he does a full clean into a thruster, into put it behind the back, and then jerks it, and then puts it back, and then does a power jerk, and then front squats it, and just way too many things.
Way too many things.
We get it.
Way too many turn of the hats.
Yes,
time.
we get it. Like, you did a no-handed back squat.
But gimmicky.
Yes.
So.
It's funny you say gimmicky, because I've also dabbled in gimmicky stuff, but I wouldn't say like it's impressive. I just felt, I don't know, maybe it's the ego. It goes back to like the ego.
It's probably going to be the ego. It's also a sense of like boredom a little bit. It's taking what we do all the time and making it fun. And I don't think that there's anything wrong. Like, the first time he did one of those complexes, it was cool. But like, let it rest. Yeah.
I think probably, like we talked about, you just mentioned Clokoff, but have you ever seen Clokoff do like a 220 thruster, a 484-pound thruster?
Yeah.
That's super impressive.
That's really Remember when we watched him do that like 35-second pause at the knee, like 160 kilo snatch or something like that? And
he has one like a training video where he does like a pause snatch with 190 or 200 kilos, like in the training hall of, I think it was Houston Worlds. Yeah, he's just like pausing there and like right at his knee, and we're just like waiting for him to do it, and he hits it. It's pretty nuts.
Dude, you missed my one-liner in front of the 8 o'clock class this morning, because when we were doing the power cleans, I was trying to stress like, hey, during this 90s, like the 10 sets, we're doing 1 to 2 power cleans for 10 sets every 90 seconds. And obviously that's plenty of time to do your one or two power cleans. And I was telling people, you got to like focus on some sort of intent today. Like, I'll give them some feedback, and then we kind of figure out a way to work towards improving that technique. Mm-hmm. And I was like, don't just show up and just like lift the weight, like do with some sort of intent. And then I was like, and in the world of Arnold, it's like, get in the boss up, like joking around. I was like, it's like doing the like voice. And because, that was one of the things he was famous for, is like, people would say, what's the difference between, like the focus, like what's the difference between you and, runner up? And he's like, I'm present in every rep. Mm-hmm. Like every rep he's focused, every rep, as he would say, he's inside the bicep. Like he's focused, he's squeezing, he's contracting all the muscles. Like he's there. He's not just ever like going through the motions.
The mind-body connection.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just grabbing it, right?
And going.
It's like you're engaging the muscles that you want to be engaged. That's a really good point. I wish a lot of people thought of that more when they lift, because you tend to see people come in and they just either read what's on the board and then go through the motions, right? Yep. Sometimes I have to, with the people that I coach on weightlifting, I have to repeat that to them. I was like, hey, I know your working sets are at this weight, right? But take the bar more times. It's not going to kill you to take the bar more times. It's not. What will kill you is just going straight to that number. Yeah. Sorry, my phone keeps going on.
And one thing I'm like also guilty of myself too here, but like sometimes moving from one exercise to the next, you've already kind of warmed up, you've done your thing, and instead of going back all the way down to the barbell and rolling through, like you're saying, taking the bar a couple more times, you kind of just shed a little weight, and then you start at the new, you start your whole new exercise and a new sets at a heavier weight than you would have.
I'm totally guilty of that too, but I think there can also be that line where it's light enough that put a couple more reps in at that weight before you add any more weight, or like take that whatever weight that you left on the bar and take it for another 2 sets or 3 sets maybe. Of course you want to get through the workout as efficiently as possible. Not everybody has 2.5 hours to train every day, so you kind of have to pick and choose, but stay on top of it. Don't go through the motions like we were talking about.
Yeah. As you, one of the things that I did want to touch base on with you today real quick was, now that you've been, almost like a month coaching group classes again?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say is like the biggest advice that you would give to somebody else who's transitioning? So last time we were talking about all these trainers of like 24-hour fitness or this or that normally would work with somebody one-on-one, but is transitioning to a group setting or is looking to get into that. But already has the one-on-one personal training experience. What would you say the one thing for them to kind of work on to transition that would help them the most? And I know this is going to change as you kind of continue down it, but I wanted to have like almost a little timeline of like, okay, you're like a month in, we'll check in like 3 more months.
So you mean from like a coaching perspective?
Yeah, like what's the major difference between going from one-on-one to a group? What was one thing I would have to study or like be aware of?
So knowing the group that you're working with. So say I have like 5 people in a class, you being one of them, I would probably, because you have more experience, I'd probably focus on you a little bit less. Not that I would just ignore you completely.
Yeah. But I could ride my bike on the own without having the eyes on the whole time.
And then like, you know, I have a lot of one-on-ones, but you know, sometimes I have 3 or 4 people, like sometimes 6 people working at the same time, weightlifting at the same time. So I've always been good about having a good peripheral, right? So having an open peripheral and knowing where everybody is, and knowing when they're taking their sets, like just out of the corner of my eye, and then I can shift my attention real quick to make sure, you know, that one lift or that exercise that they're doing that day is okay.
Yeah.
And positive reinforcement, because
like collectively to the group, or like
and individually. So sometimes, like say you're doing snatches that day, someone's having a little bit harder of a time, maybe getting frustrated. You tend to see that a lot. People get frustrated with a certain movement,
especially snatching. Like
so trying to find something where you can either cue them or like help them with their movement, and so that way they feel better about it rather than sitting on the negativity of it. Also knowing in your group where somebody can move the weight down or modify in order to have a better experience.
Yeah.
Because, you know, usually the workouts that we have are prescribed, written a certain way, but not everybody can do those movements. So what can we do to fit or get the same kind of stimulus without you having to do that complicated of a movement, or without you, you know, feeling like it's impossible for you.
Yeah, it's going to come back to knowing the people that are in front of you.
Yes.
And it was funny, this was a long time ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, at one of the coaches' meetings, everything that we talked about as far as like outlining a class started with like know your athlete, like know your member, like know your client, because like you said, you want to be able to still keep it in a group, but then tailor to them, and then toggle back and forth between one-on-one feedback and then a group feedback.
Yeah.
And I like how you said to always kind of coach the positive, because one thing that you get in a one-on-one setting is I could give you kind of an abundance of negative feedback, but I'm still there. I'm giving it constantly.
Yeah.
You can see my tonality, my body language a lot more. I'm going to be following up with you at the end and know I'm going to have a conversation before you leave. But if you do that in a group setting where you just kind of nitpick, you're not going to have that same time to feed any positive. And that might be the only cue or two that you use for that athlete for that day. And then if that's the case, they're going to be like, oh, wow, I didn't do anything right. Like Albert only came over, gave me 2 or 3 negative things, and then marched off.
Yeah. And then you feel, I don't know, sometimes you might feel defeated. You're like, oh, well, what was kind of even the point of that workout?
Yeah.
So I guess being in that group setting is, you know, realizing who's in your class, right? And then kind of focusing on somebody that might need more help. Not saying that you're completely ignoring everybody else, but
triage.
Yes. Like going to what needs attention first, like right away. And then moving on from there.
Right.
And then circling back, making sure, okay, you tried that out. Did that feel a little bit better? Did it feel worse? What can we do to make it better? Or what do you feel more comfortable doing? Because they're only in here for an hour. So it's a very small amount of time. And I don't know, I just want the best experience for them.
Right.
Versus them feeling frustrated the whole time.
Make it start with the way they feel when they leave the room, and then make it about the movement and the details afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, because even if you gave the best coaching advice ever and their movement improved, but they felt like crap when it happened, they still felt like crap. So it doesn't even matter. I think, I like that. So in summarizing it, I would say the main thing is like, keeping aware. I was trying to use like court awareness, I think is what they used to refer to it as in sports. But just keeping
court awareness. Yes.
Just keeping an eye on like everybody at the whole time, not getting the blinders in and turning your back to the class.
In football, the coaches always say, keep your head on a swivel. Yeah. Because anybody could lay you out at any time.
Might not be as extreme getting laid out in a CrossFit class, but the principle of it still is the same. Yeah. So having that situational awareness of everybody who's in the room, who's in front of you, and then knowing your athlete. And the biggest thing I would say is the coach being present, like prior to the class. You always come in because you're always like there ahead of time and just kind of chilling at the whiteboard. But when you guys are there and you're kind of hanging out and you're waiting for your class to start, like, and you see somebody who you don't recognize or maybe you haven't had in your class all the time, like go right over to them, be like, hey, how we feeling today? Like, just in case you don't remember, my name's Matt. Like, I had you last time, like whatever the case may be, and then engage with that person. So then that way they're like, okay, they're already invited in. If you just kind of stand up there, stay around, wait, and then at the time the class starts, just go in to start the class, you'll miss an opportunity to have that kind of back and forth with a lot of the people, which is real valuable time.
One thing I make a habit, or I have made a habit of doing, whether I'm coaching weightlifting or CrossFit classes, just generally asking people how they're feeling that day.
Yep.
Because
that's like the first question I always ask.
Yeah, like how's everybody feeling? Or like, where are you sore? Or is anybody sore today? Did you do the other day's workout? Did you do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's workout? You know, just to get an idea.
Yeah.
That way, you know, stretching or warming up can always be changed in so many directions. So if somebody is feeling more sore, or the majority of the class is feeling more sore in their hamstrings that day, we're going to take a little bit more time to make sure those are warmed up, or make sure whatever we're doing that day, we're prepping everybody, you know, to be as successful as they can be.
Yeah.
I also think one thing I try to not do is overcoach. Too many cues.
Great point.
Too many cues, because then you know, sometimes people want the feedback, but you give them too many cues and they start thinking about too many things.
Yeah.
So make it as simple as possible, and then also create somewhat of a positive
atmosphere
for them to, you know, do better in, rather than them being defeated.
Yeah.
And then they usually tend to walk away with more success.
Cool. I enjoyed the coaching discussion that I went into. We got into that long Taylor off Matt Fraser's like other thing. Well, we're right at about 31 minutes now, so we'll wrap it up. Since I've been diligent about posting it for you guys that are just on the listening side of things, we do have analytics here that are not the same analytics as we have every time, right? Let me see. Check the stats. And we'll go locations. Sorry guys, I'm looking up. Okay, so the number one most downloaded this week.
Oh dang! Shout out to Dublin, California. We're keeping it local.
Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
And Baltimore, Maryland, or Baltimore.
Awesome. So I think what we'll do is usually we go with the last word, but I like the last word you ended on, which is basically just keeping it a positive atmosphere.
Yeah.
I think so many times, especially with all the negativity that we see in the social medias and kind of the climate of everything that our country is in right now, if you're living here in the United States with us, you know, it's easy to believe that everything is doom and gloom, but make your world small, go back to what you can't control, knock out those tasks, and stay in a positive atmosphere and keep a positive atmosphere of those around you. It's your job, people. It's your job.
Love the positivity.
Do it. Love it. All right. Later, guys. We're out. Peace. Who is that one?